Today, I'll tell you the unbelievable story of Olivia Bennet, a poor waitress whose single act of kindness pulled her into the dangerous world of New York's most powerful and ruthless man. The neon open sign of Eddie's Diner buzzed weakly against the humid summer night, casting a faint red glow onto the sidewalk of a quiet Brooklyn street. Olivia Bennet stepped outside, grateful to breathe in the relatively fresher air beyond the diner's greasy warmth. She rolled her shoulders to ease the ache from a 12-hour shift spent balancing plates and forcing smiles that never reached her eyes. At 27, Olivia had already learned that in New York City, life rarely handed out favors. Her universe was an endless loop of pre-dawn alarms, double shifts, and the persistent worry of how to stretch each dollar to cover rent for her shoebox apartment, where only a rescue cat named Biscuit and a faded family photograph kept her company. 8 years ago, she lost her parents in a car crash. They had been driving to pick her up from her college exam when a drunk driver ran the red light. 5 years ago, she watched her little sister Lily fade away in a hospital bed, leukemia stealing her breath while Olivia drowned in medical bills she could never pay. Now, she was 27, alone, and still paying off that debt. She paused under the flickering street lamp by the curb, tugging her thin cardigan tighter around her to ward off the slight midnight chill. Tonight had been particularly draining. The dinner rush spilled into midnight, with a surge of lonely regulars and drunk bar hoppers from the place next door. Now it was past 1 a.m., and the city's pulse had slowed to an eerie lull. Olivia glanced at her phone. 1:47 a.m. Damn. The last bus to her neighborhood had come and gone, which meant walking the 15 blocks home. She took a deep breath and started down the street, the tap of her worn sneakers echoing softly between darkened storefronts. The city never truly slept, but this part of Brooklyn at this hour felt deserted and a little dangerous. Olivia's route home took her through several quiet residential blocks and one stretch of shuttered warehouses. Normally, she didn't mind. She had grown used to the solitude and had her keys wedged between her fingers, just in case. But something about this night set her on edge, a prickle at the base of her neck, an instinct telling her to stay alert. As she passed a narrow side street near an old pharmacy, Olivia heard a muffled thump followed by a faint moan. She halted mid-step. The sound had come from the mouth of the dimly lit alley just a few paces back. Her first instinct was caution. At this hour, strange noises often meant trouble she couldn't afford. Yet, as she peered into the gloom, she noticed a figure on the ground, slumped against a lamppost. Olivia's heart kicked up its pace. Someone was lying on the sidewalk. For a moment, fear rooted her in place. New York had its share of passed-out drunks and homeless souls seeking rest, and intervening could invite unpredictability. But what if they were hurt? What if this person needed help? She thought of Lily, alone in that hospital bed, waiting for someone, anyone, to save her. Don't do it, Liv, she warned herself silently, recalling every horror story her coworkers traded about Good Samaritans getting robbed or worse. Still, she found her feet already moving off the main sidewalk toward the fallen figure. If you want to know what happens next, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who loves a good drama, and stay tuned for the next part. Olivia moved closer, her heart hammering inside her chest. As her eyes adjusted to the dark, she realized it was not a drunk or a homeless man like she had first assumed. This was an older woman, maybe around 64 or 65, with silver hair cut short in a neat style that spoke of expensive, practiced elegance. She was wearing a deep navy suit, the kind of fabric Olivia had only ever seen behind the glass of high-end shops in Manhattan, where a single blazer could cost a whole month of her pay. Now the suit was smeared with sidewalk grime, one shoulder pulled crooked, as if she had gone down without time to brace herself. A glossy black high heel lay nearly 3 feet away, as though it had flown off when she collapsed. Olivia knelt beside the woman, not caring that the icy concrete seeped through the thin cloth of her work uniform pants. She gently set 2 fingers against the woman's neck, searching for a pulse. Weak, so weak. But there, Olivia leaned in closer and caught the faintest breath slipping past the woman's pale, dry lips. Alive, but clearly in danger. Her face looked washed out beneath the stuttering streetlight, eyes shut tight, the lines at her temples and across her forehead hinting at a woman who had smiled often in her life, yet now that face held only pain and helplessness. Olivia pulled off her own flimsy cardigan and laid it carefully over the woman's chest to keep her warm. It was only a thin layer of cloth, but in the late-night chill, anything could matter. That was when Olivia's gaze drifted to the dark brown leather handbag tipped over beside her. Its contents had spilled out, scattered across the pavement. A few credit cards, a deep red lipstick, a small wallet, and a clear plastic pill case holding tablets Olivia did not recognize. But one item made her stop. A pale cream card. Thick, high-quality paper she could almost feel the weight of before she touched it. She picked it up and turned it back and forth under the weak light. On the front, simple embossed lettering appeared, restrained yet commanding. No title, no company, only a name and a phone number. Vincent Romano. Olivia read the name again, her lips shaping each syllable. Vincent Romano. Why did it sound so familiar? She frowned, rummaging through her own tired memory. And then it hit her like lightning. The news clips on the television in the diner, the whispered conversations between cooks during break, names spoken with a mix of curiosity and fear. Romano, one of the most powerful families in New York. Not powerful in the way politicians or ordinary business magnates were powerful. This was the kind of power people did not say out loud, only murmured about when they thought no one was listening. Mafia. The word rang in Olivia's mind like an alarm bell. She flipped the card over, and on the back, written in an elegant slanting hand, was the line that made everything click. In case of emergency, this was her emergency contact. And Vincent Romano, whoever he was clearly the most important person in her life. Maybe her son, maybe her grandson, but without a doubt, the one she trusted most when danger found her. Olivia looked down at the unconscious woman, then back at the card in her hand, then at the phone in her pocket. Her first instinct was to call 911. That was what anyone would do. But then she remembered where she was. The industrial edge of Brooklyn, where ambulances were notorious for arriving late, where a 15-minute wait could turn into 30, even 45 if the night was heavy with other emergencies. And looking at this woman, Olivia was not sure she had that kind of time. If Vincent Romano was listed for emergencies, maybe he could get help faster. Maybe he had a private doctor. Maybe he had resources Olivia could not begin to imagine. And maybe that was exactly why she carried this card. Olivia's hand trembled as she pulled out her phone. She hesitated for a moment, her finger hovering between the keypad and the emergency call icon. Then she drew a long breath, tapped in each number from the card, and pressed call. The ring sounded. Once, twice. Olivia held her breath. And then, before a third ring could come through, someone answered. A man's voice came down the line, low, cold, and carrying an authority so sharp Olivia felt as if the air around her had dropped a few degrees. No greeting, no polite small talk. Only 3 words, spoken like an order. Who is this? Olivia swallowed hard, her throat suddenly so dry it felt as if she had just swallowed sand. That voice, only 3 words, and yet it carried the weight of power, spilling through her cheap phone as if the device itself were too small to contain it. She drew in a breath and tried to keep her voice from shaking too much. My name is Olivia, she said quickly, the words stumbling slightly. I found a woman unconscious on the sidewalk. She had your card in her handbag. I think she might be your mother. Silence, a stretch of silence that was probably only a few seconds, but to Olivia, it lasted an entire lifetime. She could almost hear the air turning solid on the other end of the line. Then the voice returned, but it was different now, sharper, colder, like a blade fresh off the stone. What happened? Where is she? I do not know what happened, Olivia answered, her eyes flicking down to the woman still lying unconscious. I was walking home after my shift and I heard a sound. She was already here when I got to her. Maybe she fell. Maybe it was a stroke or something with her heart. I'm not sure. We are near Atlantic Avenue, by the old pharmacy on 3rd Street. Is she breathing? The man cut in, with no patience for extra details. Yes, Olivia said at once. Very weak, but yes. Her pulse is weak too. She bent closer to check again, pressing her fingers to the woman's neck to be certain. She is alive, but she needs help right now. A hard exhale came through the line, as if the man were trying to hold back a storm that was screaming inside him. Then his voice came again, and this time it was an order, each word fired out clean and final as bullets. Listen to me. Do not move. Stay right there with her. Do not call anyone else. Do not let anyone come near her. I will be there in 8 minutes. 8 minutes, Olivia repeated like a parrot, not sure she had heard him right. But the road from here to... She did not even finish the sentence before the line went dead. He hung up, no waiting for her confirmation, no asking whether she agreed. He simply gave commands and disappeared. Olivia stared at the phone in her hand, the screen dark now, reflecting her own exhausted, bewildered face. Who had she just spoken to? And why did it feel as if she had stepped into a world she did not belong in? But she had no time to think. The woman beside her was still unconscious, and Olivia had promised to stay. Even if she had not truly promised, not exactly, more like she had been ordered, it did not matter. She would not leave. She could not leave. 8 minutes crawled past like 8 hours. Olivia stayed beside the woman, one hand holding the cardigan in place over her chest, the other checking her pulse and breath now and then. She spoke to her, even though she knew the woman could not hear. Meaningless whispers, meant to steady Olivia more than anyone else. You are going to be all right. Someone is coming. You are going to be fine. Around them, the alley remained dark and still, not a single passerby, not a sound except the wind worrying at loose trash and the tired buzzing of a dying streetlight. Olivia had never felt so alone, and she had never felt so determined. She would not let this woman be alone. Then she heard it. Engines, not one, several. The roar of powerful motors rushing in at a speed Olivia was certain was well beyond anything legal. She lifted her head just as 3 glossy black SUVs swung onto the street and screeched to a stop only a few feet from her. Doors opened almost at the same time. Men stepped out, all of them in black suits, moving with the precision and discipline of people who had been trained for moments exactly like this. Olivia counted at least 6, maybe 7, but she could not be sure because they moved so fast. She saw it right away, the bulges under their jackets, weapons, all of them armed. Her heart thrashed, but she did not run. She had said she would stay, and she would keep that promise, even if it meant facing whatever was coming. The men fanned out, enclosing the area as if setting up a security ring. Then the line of them shifted and parted, making room for one man to step forward. Olivia saw him and forgot how to breathe. He was tall, maybe around 6'2", with broad shoulders and a body that looked carved, as if from marble. His hair was black, cut close and neat, with a few strands of silver at the temples that did not make him look older, only made him more frighteningly authoritative. But what Olivia could not look away from were his eyes. Gray, cold, like steel tempered in ice. Those eyes swept the scene, taking in everything in an instant, and then they stopped on her. Only a second. A single, brief second where their gazes met. Olivia felt as though he could see straight through her, reading every secret, every fear, every hope she had ever tried to hide. Then the moment was gone. He moved quickly to the unconscious woman and dropped to one knee beside her with a speed that surprised Olivia for someone built like that. And when he spoke, Olivia almost did not recognize him as the same man from the phone. His voice softened, turned gentle, full of worry and love. "Mama," he whispered, his hand touching the woman's cheek with care. "I am here. Mama, I am here." Another man hurried up carrying a medical bag. A doctor, Olivia guessed. A private doctor. After that, everything happened fast. The woman was examined, lifted onto a stretcher, and taken into one of the SUVs that had become a kind of moving emergency room. And through all of it, Vincent Romano, because now Olivia knew it was him, never took his eyes off his mother. Not until the vehicle carrying her pulled away. Not until the engine noise faded into the distance. Then he turned back, facing Olivia. Those cold gray eyes were fixed on her now, and Olivia knew her life would never be the same again. Vincent Romano stood there, tall and intimidating beneath the flickering streetlight, his cold gray eyes locked onto Olivia as if she were a riddle he was determined to solve. She could feel the weight of that stare pressing down on her, but she did not lower her head. She did not step back. She had faced too many ugly things in her life to be bent by a look, even the look of the most powerful man she had ever met. "Tell me," Vincent said, his voice no longer soft the way it had been with his mother, but not completely icy the way it had first sounded on the phone. "From the beginning. Do not leave out a single detail." Olivia drew a deep breath, trying to put the tangled mess of her thoughts back into order. "I work at Eddie's diner," she began, her voice trembling slightly but staying clear. "My shift ended a little after 1 in the morning. I missed the last bus, so I had to walk home. When I passed this alley, I heard a noise and someone groaning. I was going to keep walking, but then I saw her lying there." She paused, swallowing hard. Vincent did not speak. He only stood and listened, his face giving nothing away. "I checked and she was still breathing," Olivia continued. "Her pulse was weak, but it was there. I was going to call 911, but then I saw the card in her handbag, your number, and the words "in case of emergency" on the back. I thought maybe you could get here faster than an ambulance in this part of town. So I called. She finished and stood there, waiting for him to say something, waiting for him to ask more, waiting for anything other than the silence stretching between them. Vincent studied her for a long moment, those gray eyes still unreadable. Then he said something that caught Olivia completely off guard. You stayed. Olivia blinked. Excuse me? You stayed, Vincent repeated, and there was something strange in his tone that she could not quite name. Most people would have run. They would have called 911 from a distance and disappeared before anyone arrived. They would not have wanted to get involved. But you stayed. You covered her with your sweater. You checked her pulse and her breathing. You waited. Olivia did not know what to say. She only gave a small shrug, a simple gesture she hoped would hide the confusion rolling inside her. I could not leave her there alone. No one deserves to be abandoned like that. Something flickered across Vincent's eyes, too fast for Olivia to catch. Then he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a black leather wallet. Olivia watched him open it, and her heart sank when she saw the thick stack of cash inside, all $100 bills. So many of them it looked like it could equal 3 months of her pay. Vincent peeled off a substantial portion and held it out toward her. This is my thanks, he said, his voice slipping back into that cold, businesslike calm. For your help tonight. Olivia stared at the money in his hand, at those $100 bills calling to her like a promise of easier breathing. She thought about the pile of bills waiting in her apartment, thought about the hospital debt still sitting heavy on her shoulders, thought about the worn shoes on her feet. Then she shook her head. No, thank you. Vincent lifted an eyebrow, clearly unused to being refused. You are refusing my money? I am refusing your money, Olivia confirmed, her voice steadier than she expected. I did not do this for money. I did it because it was the right thing to do. She needed help and I was there. That is all. I do not need to be paid for being decent. A strange silence settled between them. Vincent still held the money, as if he did not know what to do with it. Olivia guessed this was probably the first time in his life anyone had turned down his cash, and she almost wanted to laugh at the rare confusion on a face that looked built for cold control. At last, Vincent slid the money back into his wallet, moving slowly, as if he were still trying to understand what had just happened. He looked at her again, and Olivia could have sworn she saw something like respect pass through those gray eyes. Marco, Vincent called, never taking his gaze off Olivia. One of the men in black stepped forward immediately. Yes, boss. Take her home. Safe. Vincent finally turned away and walked toward the SUV waiting nearby. But before he got in, he stopped and looked back over his shoulder. What is your name? Olivia, she answered. Olivia Bennett. Vincent did not say anything else. He only gave a slight nod, then disappeared into the vehicle. The door shut, and the SUV tore off into the night, leaving Olivia standing there with the man named Marco. Their vehicle was the last SUV still there. Marco opened the rear door for her, polite but not overly friendly. Please. Olivia hesitated for a second, then climbed in. The inside was so luxurious it made her feel out of place, as if she were a smear on pure cream leather. She sat in silence as the SUV began to move, trying not to touch anything. Your address? Marco asked from the front seat. Olivia gave him her apartment address, and the vehicle glided smoothly through the late-night streets. When they were close, Marco handed her a card. Simple. Only a phone number. Keep it, he said, in case you need it. Olivia took the card, not sure what to say. She only nodded and stepped out when the SUV stopped in front of her aging building. The vehicle vanished the moment her feet hit the sidewalk. Olivia's apartment was tiny and run down, but it was hers. Biscuit, the calico cat she had picked up from an alley 2 years ago, came running to greet her the second she opened the door. She scooped him up, felt the warm purr rumbling in that small chest, and suddenly everything that had happened tonight crashed over her like a wave. She sat down by the window and looked out at the empty street below. Biscuit curled in her lap. The card Marco had given her was still in her hand. What did I just step into? She whispered, not sure if she was asking herself or the cat. Miles away, in a lavish mansion, Vincent Romano sat beside his mother's bed, watching her sleep peacefully under the quiet supervision of his private doctor. But his mind was not fully there. He held his phone, and on the screen was a photograph Marco had taken before driving the girl home. Olivia Bennett, standing under the streetlight, her hair slightly messy, her eyes tired but unwavering. He stared at the photo for a long time, his thumb unconsciously brushing the screen, and for the first time in many years, Vincent Romano found himself curious about someone. 3 days had passed since that fateful night, and Olivia kept trying to convince herself that everything had gone back to normal. She still woke before dawn, still pulled on the same worn uniform, still walked to Eddie's diner, and served the familiar faces with a tired smile that was nonetheless real. Her life was still an endless loop of punishing shifts and too little money. But something had changed. The feeling of being watched. The first time Olivia noticed it was on the morning of the second day after it happened. She was wiping down a table near the window when her eyes drifted outside and she saw it, a glossy black SUV parked across the street, only a few dozen yards from the diner. The kind of vehicle she had seen that night, the kind Vincent Romano had stepped out of. She tried not to pay attention, telling herself it was just coincidence. New York had thousands of black SUVs. There was no reason to believe that one had anything to do with her. But the SUV was still there when she went on her lunch break, still there when her afternoon shift ended. And the next day, it appeared again. Same spot, same vehicle, or at least one that looked exactly like it. Then there was the man with the newspaper. He sat in the coffee shop across the street, his face hidden behind a copy of the New York Times, but Olivia could feel his attention as if it slipped through the paper itself. He sat there for hours, ordering nothing but a single cup of coffee, and every time Olivia glanced over, she saw the newspaper dip just slightly, as if he were watching her. "Hey, Liv." Harper's voice came from behind, making Olivia start and turn. Her red-haired coworker looked at her with an expression that was half curiosity, half teasing. "You got a stalker or a sugar daddy? What?" Olivia blinked. Harper jerked her chin toward the window. "That fancy black SUV. It has been parked there for days. And the newspaper guy across the street, too. What did you get yourself into?" "Nothing," Olivia said quickly. Maybe too quickly. "It is just a coincidence." Harper raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but she did not push. "Sure. Well, if it is a sugar daddy, remember to share. I could use one too." Olivia tried to smile, but the smile did not reach her eyes. She knew it was not coincidence. She knew who was behind it. She just did not understand why. The answer came at the end of her shift that day, in the form of a package. Eddie, the owner, brought it in through the back door with a curious look. "Someone sent this for you, Olivia," he said, setting the box on the counter. "No return name, just yours." Olivia stared at it, her heart picking up speed. She opened it under Harper and Eddie's watchful eyes. Inside, nestled neatly in white tissue paper, was a pair of sneakers, not the cheap kind she usually bought from discount stores. These were professional running shoes, with cushioned soles and a sleek design, the kind she had only seen displayed behind glass in upscale sporting goods shops, priced at a full week of her wages. And they were her size, exactly. "Oh my God," Harper breathed, eyes wide. "Those are Nike Air Max. The expensive ones. Who sent them?" "There was no note," Olivia said, her voice calmer than she felt. No name, but in her head, everything was as clear as daylight. She remembered that night, kneeling beside the unconscious woman, remembered her own worn sneakers, the soles rubbed nearly smooth after years of use. Vincent Romano had seen them. "Harper," she said evenly, "can I borrow a pen and some paper?" 5 minutes later, Olivia stepped out of the diner with the shoebox in one hand and a small slip of paper in the other. She walked straight toward the black SUV still parked across the street, her steps steady and deliberate. She knew someone was watching. She did not care. As she got closer, she could make out the shape of someone sitting inside behind the tinted glass, but the door did not open, and no one stepped out. Olivia did not wait. She set the shoebox down right in front of the vehicle's door, laid the note on top, then turned and walked away without looking back. On the paper, her handwriting was clear and firm. "Thank you, but I do not need charity. If you want to talk, come yourself. O.B." Not far away, in an office high above Manhattan, Vincent Romano received a message from his people only minutes later. He opened the attached image, a photograph of the shoebox and the note, and read the words. One corner of his mouth lifted, a smile so rare Marco, standing across from him, almost did not recognize it. "She has guts, boss," Marco said, his tone edged with admiration. Vincent did not answer right away. He read the message again, especially the last line. "If you want to talk, come yourself." This was the second time that girl had refused him. The second time she had not bowed to his money or his power. The second time she had surprised him. And Vincent Romano, the man New York feared, found that he was not angry. He was entertained. "Yeah," he said at last, rising from the leather chair. "She does." He reached for the coat hanging on its hook and swung it onto his shoulders with a decisive motion. Marco watched him, eyebrows lifting. "Where are you going, boss?" Vincent did not look back, but Marco could hear the smile in his voice. "She wants me to come myself, so I will." The bell over the door of Eddie's diner rang at 4 in the afternoon, right in the dead stretch between the lunch crowd and the dinner rush. Olivia was wiping down the counter with her back to the entrance, so she did not see who walked in, but she felt it. The air inside the diner shifted, as if someone had pulled the oxygen right out of the room. The low hum of conversation from the few customers at their booths fell silent. Even the clink of forks against plates stopped. She turned, and her heart seemed to miss a beat. Vincent Romano stood there, framed in the doorway, tall and commanding as if the whole world had been built to lower its eyes for him. But what startled Olivia most was that he had come alone. No Marco, no black-suited entourage, no SUV idling at the curb with its engine already running. Just him, in a dark gray shirt and black slacks, simpler than the expensive suit he had worn that night, but still carrying a kind of unmistakable authority. His gray eyes swept the diner, met Olivia's gaze for an instant. Then he walked toward the farthest corner and sat at an empty table with a clear view of both the front door and the back. The seat of someone who stayed alert. The seat of someone with enemies. Harper appeared beside Olivia, her eyes round as coins. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Who is that? He looks like he just walked out of The Godfather." Olivia did not answer. She drew a slow breath, smoothed her apron, pulled her order pad from her pocket, and walked toward Vincent's table. She could feel Harper's stare burning into her back, along with Eddie's from the kitchen and the curious looks of a few customers. She did not care. She had faced this man in the dark, beside a dying woman. She could face him in daylight, in her own diner. "Black coffee," she said when she reached his table, her tone calm, as if she were serving any other customer. "Anything else?" Vincent looked up at her, and Olivia could have sworn she saw a flicker of amusement pass through those cold gray eyes. "Sit down." It was not an invitation. It was an order, the kind of order Olivia guessed no one dared refuse. "I am working," she said, not flinching. "I will pay for your time," Vincent replied, as if that settled everything, as if money were the answer to every problem. Olivia felt that familiar fire flare in her chest. She met his eyes without lowering her gaze, without stepping back. "Do you still not understand? Not everything can be bought with money." A silence stretched between them. Then something unbelievable happened. Vincent Romano smiled. Not the sharp, mocking curve Olivia had seen before. Not a polite, practiced smile. A real one. The kind that deepened the lines at the corners of his eyes and softened the constant chill in his face. For a moment, he looked almost ordinary, almost not like the frightening, powerful man the entire city feared. "You are interesting, Olivia Bennett," he said, his voice lower now, warmer. "All right, no payment, but give me 5 minutes. Just 5. Olivia studied him, weighing him. Then she sighed, pulled out the chair across from him, and sat down, setting her order pad on the table. 5 minutes. Vincent nodded as if he had won something significant. And maybe, for a man like him, getting someone to agree without threats or bribery really was a victory. "First," he began, "I want to apologize." Olivia could not hide her surprise. "Apologize for what?" "For having someone watch you without telling you." He admitted it plainly, without excuses, without dodging. "And for the shoes. I thought it was a way to say thank you, but clearly I was wrong." Olivia blinked. She had not expected an apology. She expected it even less when she realized it sounded sincere. "Why?" she asked, the question that had been burning in her mind for days. "Why are you watching me? I am just a waitress, nobody knows. I have nothing you should care about." Vincent was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes on her with something she could not read. Then he spoke, his voice low. "To protect you. Protect me?" Olivia did not bother to hide her skepticism. "From what?" He did not answer right away. She saw a shadow pass through his eyes, something close to pain, to a weariness she never would have expected in a man like him. "From my world," Vincent said at last, so softly Olivia almost missed it. That answer opened more questions than it closed. But Olivia could feel this was not the moment to press. Instead, she only gave a small nod, accepting what he was willing to share. Vincent looked at her for another beat, then continued, "My mother wants to meet you. She is awake and recovering well. She wants to thank the person who saved her life. In person." Olivia felt her heart quicken. Meet his mother. Go to his home. Step into his world. Every instinct in her screamed that it was a bad idea, that she should refuse, that she should run as far as she could from this man and everything tied to him. Then she thought of the woman lying unconscious in the dark. The pale face, the shallow breath, the way Vincent had knelt beside his mother and whispered, "Mama, I am here," with a voice full of love. She might be the mother of a Mafia boss, but she was still a mother, and any mother deserved the chance to say thank you if she wanted to. "All right," Olivia heard herself say, almost surprised by her own answer. "I will come, but for her, not for you." Vincent's mouth tilted, that smile returning, changing his cold face completely. "Of course," he said, a hint of dry humor in his tone. "Not unkind. For my mother, not for me. Are you free tomorrow?" The black SUV rolled to a stop in front of a massive iron gate, the kind Olivia had only ever seen in movies about the very rich. She sat in the back seat, her fingers unconsciously smoothing the small floral dress she had chosen after nearly an hour of standing in front of her meager closet. It was the nicest dress she owned, something she had bought on clearance 3 years ago for an old friend's wedding. But in this luxury vehicle, staring through the tinted glass at the ornate metalwork and the towering fence, her dress suddenly felt cheap and out of place in a way she had never felt before. The gate opened slowly, and the SUV glided inside. Olivia held her breath as the world beyond revealed itself. A stone-paved driveway curved through an enormous garden, with emerald lawns cut to perfection, rose bushes in full bloom, and ancient oak trees casting wide, protective shade. In the distance, a marble fountain sent glittering streams of water into the late afternoon light, and at the end of the drive stood the mansion. No, mansion felt too small a word. This was an Italian-style estate that looked like a private castle, with soaring columns, intricate wrought iron balconies, and a pale golden stone facade that carried an old, commanding grandeur. Olivia had seen homes like this in magazines, but she had never once imagined she would step inside one. She climbed out when Marco opened the door for her, feeling as if she were crossing into another life, one that did not belong to her. Her little floral dress, her old heels she had polished so carefully, everything about her seemed to announce she should not be here. But she was here now, and she was not the kind of woman who quit. Vincent was waiting at the front entrance, those unreadable gray eyes fixed on her, but as she drew closer, Olivia could have sworn she saw a thread of warmth pass through them. He said nothing. He only gave a small nod and offered his hand like an invitation. Olivia hesitated for a second, then placed her hand in his and let him lead her inside. The interior was even more overwhelming than the outside. Polished marble floors, paintings on the walls that Olivia guessed were antiques, crystal chandeliers casting a shimmering light, and furniture that looked like a single chair might cost more than her entire apartment. Yet for all that luxury, the space did not feel cold or distant. Family photographs sat on the mantel. A half-finished knitted throw lay draped over an armchair. The air held the scent of fresh flowers, and something faintly sweet, like pastries cooling somewhere nearby. This was a home, not just a grand house. They moved down a hallway and stopped at a room with its door open wide. Inside, seated in a velvet armchair beside a large window, was the woman Olivia had found in the dark. Catherine Romano looked nothing like she had that night. The pallor and weakness were gone. She wore an elegant cream knit outfit, her silver hair brushed neatly into place, and her blue eyes brightened the moment she saw Olivia. "There she is," Catherine said, her voice warm and full of affection. "Olivia, is it? Come here, sweetheart." She rose to her feet, and to Olivia's surprise, she stepped forward and wrapped her in a hug as if they had known each other for years. There was no pride, no cool distance of someone born into a higher world, only the honest warmth of a mother, of a woman. "Thank you," Catherine said, taking Olivia's hands and holding them tight. "Thank you for saving my life. Vincent told me everything. You stayed when anyone else would have walked away. You made the call. You covered me with your sweater. If it had not been for you, I might not have survived that night." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "I only did what anyone would do." "Not everyone would," Catherine said, shaking her head, her eyes shining with something like understanding. "I have lived long enough to know that. You are a special girl, Olivia, They sat together on the sofa, and Catherine had someone bring in tea and cakes. Vincent disappeared somewhere, leaving the two women alone, and Olivia found she could breathe easier without those gray eyes on her. Catherine asked about her job, her life, and then about her family. That question made Olivia go still for a moment. "I do not have any family left," she said softly, though the pain still showed through. "My parents died in a car accident 8 years ago. They were driving to pick me up after my college entrance exam when a drunk driver ran a red light. My mother died at the scene. My father died on the way to the hospital." Catherine laid her hand over Olivia's, saying nothing, only listening. "And I had a little sister," Olivia went on, her voice trembling. "Lily. She died 5 years ago. Leukemia. I did everything I could, but I did not have enough money for her treatment. I am still paying the hospital bills even now." Tears spilled out before she could stop them, and Olivia wiped at her face quickly, ashamed to cry in front of someone who was almost a stranger. But Catherine did not let her feel ashamed. She pulled Olivia into her arms and held her the way a mother holds a daughter. "I understand," she whispered. "I understand that kind of pain. I lost a son too. Luca, Vincent's younger brother. He was only 25 when he died." Olivia lifted her head and looked into Catherine's blue eyes and saw the same ache she saw in the mirror every day. Two women, one rich and one poor, one older and one younger, yet tied together by the same wound no money or power could ever heal. They sat there in silence, hand in hand, quiet tears falling. And in the doorway, standing in the dim hallway shadow, Vincent Romano watched the scene in front of him. He had meant to step in and check on them, but he stopped when he saw his mother holding Olivia. He heard the story of her parents, of her sister. He watched the tears track down her cheeks, and something in him shifted. The coldness in his gray eyes eased, the constant tension in his face loosened. And for the first time in many years, Vincent Romano felt something other than duty, power, and anger. He felt concern. She was getting closer to his world, but danger was getting closer too. Catherine did not let Olivia leave right after that tear-soaked conversation. She held Olivia's hand, her blue eyes bright with the kind of determination only a mother can carry, the kind that does not accept no. "You have to stay for dinner with me. I will not take no for an answer." It was a command, not an invitation, and somehow Olivia could not find the will to refuse. Maybe it was the warmth in Catherine's voice. Maybe it was because it had been too long since anyone had invited her to a meal as a guest instead of as the one serving it. Or maybe it was simple curiosity, a need to understand this world, this family, this man who kept watching her from the edges with eyes she still could not read. Dinner was served in a smaller room, warmer and more intimate than the grand banquet hall Olivia had glimpsed in the hallway. A classic oak table was laid with a spotless white cloth, a crystal chandelier cast gentle light overhead, and the scent of old family Italian cooking rose from delicate porcelain plates. Only 3 people sat down, Catherine at the head of the table, Olivia and Vincent facing each other on either side, close enough that Olivia could feel his presence like an invisible pull, as if the air itself bent slightly toward him. "This is my grandmother's recipe," Catherine said as a server set down a plate of handmade pasta with fresh tomato sauce and basil. She brought it from Sicily when she immigrated here more than 70 years ago. Vincent loved this dish the most when he was a boy. He could eat 3 plates in one sitting. "Mom!" Vincent warned, but Catherine ignored him. She was in what Olivia recognized as storytelling mode, and nothing could stop her once she started. "Do you know, Olivia," Catherine went on, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "When he was little, Vincent wanted to be an architect. He used to draw the most beautiful buildings. I still have some of his sketches. He had real talent." Olivia could not hide her curiosity and glanced at Vincent. "An architect?" she asked, surprise coloring her voice. "You? She is exaggerating," Vincent said stiffly, but Olivia noticed a faint flush rise on his cheekbones. Vincent Romano, the most powerful Mafia boss in New York, was embarrassed. It was not something she ever imagined she would witness. "I am not exaggerating at all," Catherine shot back. "You could have built the most beautiful buildings in this city if you had chosen that path. But life had other plans." "Mom," Vincent said, and this time his voice carried something else, something softer and more painful. A brief silence passed over the table, and Olivia understood that behind the story of a childhood dream was a harsher reality. Vincent had not chosen this life. This life had chosen him, but Catherine did not let the heaviness linger. She quickly shifted to another story, this one about how terrified Vincent had been of dogs when he was small, He once ran inside and hid under the bed for 2 hours because of the neighbor's chihuahua, she chuckled. A tiny little chihuahua. And this time, Olivia could not hold it in. She laughed. A real laugh, from deep in her chest, the kind of laugh she had forgotten the feeling of a long time ago. She laughed until tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, and when she finally lifted her head, she caught Vincent looking at her. Not the way he had looked before, measuring her, reading her. He looked at her as if she had done something extraordinary, as if her laughter was the most precious sound he had heard in years. And in that moment, the cold gray eyes of Vincent Romano were not cold anymore. After dinner, Catherine excused herself to rest early. Still recovering, she hugged Olivia tight and made her promise she would come back to visit. Vincent walked Olivia out into the garden while they waited for Marco to bring the car around. The garden at night looked like a painting, moonlight falling over rose bushes and the faint scent of jasmine drifting through the air. They walked side by side in silence for a while, until Vincent spoke. "Tell me about Lily." Olivia stopped, startled by the sudden question, but there was something in his voice, a rare sincerity that kept her from refusing. She paused and drew a breath. When she passed, she held my hand and told me not to cry. She said I had done everything I could, that I was the best sister in the world, that I had to keep living. Vincent did not offer easy comfort. He did not say everything would be fine, or that time would heal the wound. He only stood there and listened, and when Olivia finished, he said something she did not expect. "You are stronger than you think." Olivia shook her head. "I did not have a choice." "That is the definition of strength," Vincent replied, his voice low, filled with understanding. "Keep going when there is no other choice." They stood there a little longer in a quiet, comfortable silence, two strangers who had somehow shared the deepest parts of themselves. Then, the SUV appeared at the end of the path, and the moment ended. Vincent walked Olivia to the car and opened the door for her. But before she climbed in, he stopped and said something that froze her in place. "You should stay away from me." He was warning her off. Olivia stood frozen beside the open car door, not sure she had heard him correctly. She turned to face Vincent, her brows drawn tight with confusion. "Why?" she asked plainly. "You invited me here. You let your mother insist I stay for dinner. You just asked me about my sister, and now you are telling me to stay away?" Vincent did not answer right away. He stood there, tall and dangerous beneath the moonlight, but something in those gray eyes made Olivia feel the conflict inside him, as if he were fighting with himself. At last he exhaled, a heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his voice low. "Truly know?" "I know you are Vincent Romano," Olivia said. "I know you are rich and powerful. I am guessing you did not make your money selling flowers or running a charity." A bitter smile flickered across Vincent's mouth. "My father was Don Romano. He built this empire from nothing when he first came to America. An empire built with blood, with tears, with things you do not want to know. When he died 10 years ago, I inherited all of it. Not because I wanted to, because I did not have a choice." He paused, his gaze fixed on Olivia. "I have enemies, a lot of enemies. People who want me dead, who want to take everything I have. They will not hesitate to hurt anyone close to me to get what they want. My brother, Luca." He stopped, his voice catching for the briefest moment. "He died because he was too close to me. Because he was my brother." Olivia felt a sharp ache in her chest at that. She had heard Luca's name in Catherine's story, but now she understood the true reason beneath his death. "Anyone close to me becomes a target," Vincent continued, his voice cold but threaded with pain. "My mother has to live with security around the clock. I do not have friends. I do not have a girlfriend. I do not have anyone except people who are paid to stand beside me. Because anyone who comes near can get hurt. Or worse." He stepped closer, those gray eyes searching her face as if looking for something. "You are a good person, Olivia. You saved my mother without asking for a cent. You refused my money. You looked me in the eye when you spoke. You are not like anyone I have ever met. And that is exactly why you should stay away. Because I do not want to see you get hurt." Vincent finished, and his voice was almost a plea. A long silence opened between them. The night wind moved softly, carrying jasmine from the garden, but Olivia barely felt it. She only looked into Vincent's eyes, into the shadow, and the pain he was trying to hide, and she made a decision. "I have lost enough people to know how short life is," she said, her voice steady and clear. "My parents were taken in an accident no one saw coming. My sister was taken, even after I did everything I could to save her. I learned that life does not wait for anyone, and fear does not save anyone." Vincent stared at her, his eyes widening slightly, as if he could not believe what he was hearing. Olivia went on, her voice growing stronger. "I am not going to live in fear, but I am not stupid either. I know your world is dangerous. I know there are risks, but that is my decision to make, not yours." She stepped closer, lifting her chin so she could look him straight in the eye, without a trace of fear. "If you want me to leave, I will leave. But say it. Say you want me gone. Do not decide for me by pretending you are doing it for my own good." Vincent stood still, silent, his gray eyes locked on hers, and Olivia could have sworn something shifted in that look. Surprise, admiration, and maybe something deeper she did not dare name. "No one talks to me like that," Vincent said at last, his voice rougher than before. "Not ever." "Well, someone just did," Olivia replied, a small smile brushing her mouth. They stood there a little longer in a strange silence that did not feel uncomfortable at all. Then Vincent nodded, a small gesture that carried weight. He did not send her away. He did not tell her she had to leave. He only stepped back and opened the car door wider for her. "Marco will take you home safely," he said, his voice settling back into calm. "We will talk again, if you want." Olivia nodded and got into the SUV, feeling Vincent's gaze on her until the door closed. Inside, as the vehicle rolled through the iron gate and out of the estate, Olivia asked herself a question she could not answer. Why was she not afraid? She had just heard Vincent Romano, a Mafia boss, speak of blood and enemies and danger. She had just been warned that anyone close to him could die. And what had she done? Challenged him, told him not to decide for her. She was either very brave or very foolish. She did not yet know which. Back at the Romano estate, Vincent stood at the front entrance and watched the SUV until it disappeared beyond the gate. He remained there a long time after, in the late-night darkness, thinking about the girl who had looked him in the eye and said she did not live in fear. Olivia Bennett. She would be his death, or maybe she would be his salvation. He did not yet know which. She is not afraid, but she should be. In the days that followed, Vincent Romano began showing up at Eddie's diner like it was a habit. Not every day, but often enough that Olivia started to notice the pattern. Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, always in the late afternoon, when the place was at its emptiest, always the same seat, the farthest corner with a clear line of sight to both doors. Always black coffee, no sugar, no milk, and always alone, no entourage. The first time he came back after that night, Olivia felt uneasy. She did not know how she was supposed to treat him. Like an ordinary customer, like a Mafia boss, like a man who had warned her to stay away and then appeared anyway, as if the warning had never existed. But Vincent did not ask for anything special. He sat there reading the paper or working on a slim laptop, sipping his coffee and bothering no one. Sometimes, when Olivia passed by, he would lift his head and give a small nod of greeting. That was all. Slowly, Olivia's unease softened into acceptance. She got used to seeing the black SUV parked outside on certain days, used to brewing a cup of black coffee and setting it on the corner table before he even had to order, used to feeling those gray eyes follow her as she moved between tables, no longer frightening, no longer unsettling, almost like a familiar presence. Then acceptance became something else. Olivia began to look forward to the days he came. She began to feel disappointed when she glanced out the window and did not see that familiar black SUV. She began to notice that she brushed her hair more carefully on Tuesday mornings, on Thursday mornings, on Sundays. She did not want to admit it, but it happened anyway. Their conversations started to last longer. At first it was only a few quick exchanges when she brought his coffee or cleared his table, but when the diner was quiet, when there were not many customers left to serve, Olivia found herself standing by his table for an extra moment, then sitting for a moment, then talking. Vincent asked her about her day, not the empty small talk people offered without caring about the answer. He asked, and he listened. He truly listened. He remembered the little details she mentioned, that Harper was fighting with her boyfriend, that Eddie's back was hurting and he needed rest, that her cat Biscuit refused to eat the new food. And each time he brought up those details again, checking in with genuine concern, Olivia felt something warm spread through her chest. Miles away at the Romano estate, Marco Santini was watching a change he had never seen in more than a decade of working for Vincent. His boss was less tense, less quick to anger. Once, Marco even heard Vincent whistle as he walked down the hallway, a sound Marco had never imagined he would hear from that man. Catherine noticed too. One evening, when Vincent came to visit her room, she looked at her son with the eyes of a mother who missed nothing. "You have feelings for her," she said. Not a question, a statement. Vincent did not answer right away. He looked out the window, those gray eyes distant. And when he turned back, he did not deny it. That said everything. One night in late August, rain came down without warning. Not the soft, romantic movie rain, but the kind of New York downpour that could soak you through in seconds. Olivia finished her shift at 11 at night and stood in the doorway, staring out at the thick curtain of water with quiet despair. She did not have an umbrella. She never remembered an umbrella. And the last bus had come and gone long ago. She was trying to figure out how fast she could run when a familiar black SUV slid up to the curb. The back door opened, and Vincent stepped out holding a large black umbrella. He did not speak. He only walked to her and held the umbrella over her, letting half his own body get drenched in the rain. Olivia stared at him, her heart stumbling. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice almost lost under the roar of the rain. "It is raining," Vincent replied simply, as if that explained everything. "You do not have an umbrella." They walked to the vehicle in silence, shoulder to shoulder under the umbrella, and Olivia felt heat radiating from him even in the cold. Inside the SUV, she gave him her address, and they sat close in the dim glow of city lights sliding past the windows. When the car stopped in front of her worn building, Vincent got out and walked her all the way to the door, the umbrella still shielding her while his shoulder soaked through. They stood there, at her entrance, the rain falling around them like a wall of water. Then Vincent lifted his hand, his fingers brushing her cheek, so gentle Olivia forgot how to breathe, but he pulled back as if he had touched fire. Something crossed his eyes, maybe restraint, maybe fear. "Good night, Olivia," he said, his voice low. It was the first time he had said her name like that. Not Miss Bennet, not Waitress, but Olivia, just Olivia. She swallowed, feeling her name on his tongue like a caress. "Good night," she replied, and then, before she could think, she added, "Vincent." He paused, his gray eyes holding hers with something she did not dare name. Then he gave a slight nod, turned, and walked away into the rain. Olivia watched until the SUV disappeared at the end of the street. She touched her cheek where his fingers had been, and realized she was smiling. They both knew something was changing. Something bigger than friendship, more dangerous than safety. But they did not know the darkness was moving closer too, and it would not wait for them to be ready. While Olivia drifted into sleep with the image of gray eyes and the memory of fingers on her cheek, an emergency meeting was taking place in the most heavily guarded room of the Romano estate. Vincent sat at the head of the table, his face returned to its familiar coldness, his gray eyes sharp as razors. Around him were 5 of his most trusted men, the ones who had followed him through blood and fire, the ones he trusted with his life. Marco stood at his right, his expression tighter than usual. "News came in from Chicago this morning," Marco began, his voice heavy. "Nikolai Volkov has left his base. According to our source, he is on his way back to New York." The name landed in the room like a bomb. The air turned to ice, and Vincent felt a familiar fury ignite in his chest. Nikolai Volkov, the name he had prayed he would never have to hear again. 5 years ago, Volkov had been an ally of the Romano family. He and Vincent's father, Don Romano, had built an empire on the East Coast together, sharing territory and profit. But Volkov's greed had no limit. He wanted more. He wanted everything. And when Vincent's father refused to give in, Volkov betrayed them. He sent men to plant a bomb in Luca's car, Vincent's brother, when the young man, only 25, was on his way to meet a friend. The blast left nothing but ash and pain. Vincent had taken revenge. He destroyed everything Volkov had built in New York, burned his businesses to the ground, and took down his men one by one. He drove Volkov out of the city like a rabid dog, stripped of everything except his life. That had been Vincent's greatest mistake. He should have killed Volkov when he had the chance. But Catherine had begged him to stop. "Enough blood," she had said. "Do not let hatred turn you into a monster." And Vincent had listened to his mother. 5 years. 5 years of Volkov hiding in Chicago, licking his wounds and rebuilding his strength. And now he was coming back. "What does he want?" Vincent asked, his voice cold as ice. Marco hesitated for a beat, then placed an envelope on the table. "This is what our source intercepted. Volkov is gathering information about your weakness, Vincent frowned, took the envelope, and opened it. Inside was a thin file and a photograph. The moment he saw the photograph, everything in him went still. Olivia, standing in front of Eddie's diner, holding a drink tray, that tired but honest smile on her mouth. The photo had been taken from a distance, at an angle, clearly by someone watching her without her knowing. Vincent gripped the photograph, his fingers tightening until the knuckles blanched. For a moment, it was as if the room had been emptied of air. The men around the table exchanged uneasy looks, realizing they had never seen their boss react like this to anything. "Since when?" Vincent asked, his tone so even it was frightening. "We are not sure," Marco replied. "Maybe a few weeks. The source says Volkov had someone watching her since the papers ran the story about Mrs. Catherine being saved." A wave of anger rolled through Vincent's chest, but he forced it down. Anger would not help now. He needed to think. He needed to plan. He needed to protect her. "Increase her protection," he ordered, his voice decisive. "Around the clock. Do not let her go anywhere alone, but keep it discreet. She cannot know." Marco nodded. "And Volkov. We need to find him before he moves. Do whatever it takes to learn where he is, what he is doing, who he is meeting. I want every step he takes." Vincent looked down at the photograph again, and in that instant, his gray eyes were not cold. They burned with something primitive and dangerous. "If he touches her," Vincent said, his voice barely above a breath, "I will not make the same mistake as last time." Hundreds of miles away, in a dark room on the outskirts of Chicago, Nikolai Volkov sat in a leather armchair, the only light coming from the fire burning in the fireplace. He was a man of about 45, blonde hair gone pale with age, a hard-angled face marked by a long scar running from his temple down to his cheekbone, a souvenir from his war with Vincent 5 years earlier. In his hand was a photograph identical to the one Vincent had just seen. Olivia Bennett, outside Eddie's diner, unaware she was being watched by the most dangerous enemies of her life. Volkov studied the picture with a slow, poisonous smile. "So the great Vincent Romano finally has a weakness," he said, his voice thick with a Russian accent. "A poor waitress." "How interesting." Dmitry Kozlov, his most loyal enforcer, stood in the shadows near the door. He was a large man, with eyes as cold as a snake, and hands that had strangled more lives than anyone cared to count. "What do you want us to do?" Dmitry asked. "Take her now." Volkov shook his head slowly, the smile on his mouth widening. "No, not yet. Let him fall deeper first. Let him love her. Let her become the air he breathes. Then we will take her away, and then he will know what it feels like to lose the most precious thing. The way I lost everything because of him." He looked at the photograph for a long moment, his thumb stroking Olivia's face like a dark promise. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he tore the photo in half. The sound of ripping paper cut through the silence like a death sentence. Olivia started to sense something was wrong on a Wednesday afternoon, when a strange man walked into Eddie's diner. He did not look like the usual customers. He did not order food. He did not take a seat. He only stood in the doorway, his cold eyes sweeping the room like he was searching for something. Then his gaze stopped on Olivia. She was behind the counter, coffee pot in hand, and she felt that stare like a strip of ice sliding down her spine. He looked at her for 10 seconds, his face blank, then turned and walked out without a word. The bell over the door rattled, and he vanished into the sidewalk crowd as if he had never existed. Olivia stood there, her heartbeat speeding up, trying to convince herself he was just a weird stranger. New York had plenty of those. There was nothing to worry about, but she could not shake the growing unease in her gut. That night, when she reached her apartment, she found the trash cans outside her door had been torn apart. Garbage bags ripped open, their contents scattered everywhere. The building manager said it was probably stray cats or someone digging for bottles to cash in, but Olivia knew that was not it. She had lived there for 3 years and had never seen anything like this. Over the next few days, the feeling of being watched sharpened, not the kind she had gotten used to from Vincent's people, the distant presence that never felt threatening. This was different, darker, more dangerous. She felt unseen eyes on her when she walked home, felt a shadow slip away at the corner when she turned her head, felt a danger she could not see, but knew was real. On the 3rd day, when Vincent came to the diner as he always did, Olivia could not keep quiet anymore. She waited until the place was nearly empty, then walked straight to his table and sat down across from him. Vincent looked up, his gray eyes softening when he saw her, but the faint curve of his mouth died the moment he saw the seriousness in her face. "Something is happening," she said bluntly, without easing into it. "There is something you are keeping from me." Vincent did not answer right away. He looked at her, and Olivia saw a shadow pass through those gray eyes, a shadow she had never seen there before. "Why do you think that?" he asked carefully. "Because a strange man walked into the diner, stared at me, and left. Because someone went through the trash outside my apartment. Because I feel like I am being followed in a way that is completely different than before, not by your people, by someone else." A heavy silence stretched between them. Olivia could see Vincent fighting with himself, jaw clenched, fingers tapping lightly against the tabletop. He did not want to tell her, but he could not lie to her either. Finally, he exhaled and leaned forward, lowering his voice until only she could hear. "An old enemy of mine is coming back. His name is Nikolai Volkov." Olivia listened as Vincent explained, his voice steady but threaded with pain. About Volkov and the betrayal 5 years ago. About Luka, his brother, 25 when he was killed by a bomb planted in his car. About how Vincent had driven Volkov out of New York but had not killed him. About how Volkov was returning now, looking for revenge. And about how he had discovered Olivia. "He knows about you," Vincent finished, his voice tight as if something were squeezing it. "He knows you matter to me, and he will use that." Olivia sat there, taking in everything she had just heard. Her heart beat fast, but not purely from fear. Part of her wanted to get up and run as far away from all of this as she could. But another part, the larger part, the part that had faced the deaths of her parents and her sister without breaking, would not let her retreat. "You need to be more careful," Vincent said urgently. "Do not go out alone at night. Do not open your door to strangers. I will increase your protection, but you have to." "I told you already," Olivia cut in, her voice steady. "I do not live in fear." Vincent looked at her, something complicated, crossing his face. "You make me admire you and want to strangle you at the same time," he said, a note of helplessness in his tone. Olivia gave a small smile, a flicker of warmth in the tension. "I will take that as a compliment." They held each other's gaze in silence, and then Vincent did something Olivia did not expect. He stood, came around the table, and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was quick, almost awkward, as if he was not used to showing affection like this. But Olivia felt the strength in the arms around her, felt his warm breath against her ear, felt the fast beat of his heart against her chest. Then he let go, as quickly as he had held her, as if he were afraid that if he kept her any longer, she would disappear. "I will not let anything happen to you," Vincent said, his voice rougher than usual. It was not an empty promise, it was a vow. Olivia looked into his eyes and saw determination burning in that gray stare. She nodded, saying nothing, but somehow she believed him, even though she knew there were promises that not even the most powerful man could keep. The package arrived on a Friday morning, when Eddie's diner was at its busiest, filled with customers grabbing breakfast before work. The delivery man said it was a gift for Olivia Bennett. No sender name, no return address, just a neat square cardboard box wrapped in plain brown paper. Harper was the one who took it and carried it over to Olivia with a curious look touched by teasing. "Somebody sent you a present," she said, setting the box on the counter, "probably from that mysterious guy who keeps coming in." Olivia stared at the box as unease rose in her chest. She was not expecting a gift from anyone, and after what Vincent had told her a few days earlier, anything out of the ordinary made her tense. But she did not want to scare Harper for no reason, so she picked up the box, felt how strangely light it was, and slowly peeled away the wrapping. Inside was an ordinary white box. She lifted the lid, and the world around her seemed to freeze. Inside, resting on a layer of cloth as red as blood, was a doll. A porcelain doll with blonde hair and blue eyes, the kind children played with. But this one was not whole. Its neck had been cut clean through, its head separated from its body, and in the torn place someone had stuffed a small strip of white paper. Olivia's hands shook as she pulled the paper free and smoothed it out with fingers she could not steady. On the paper, written in ink the color of fresh blood, were 2 words: "She's next." Harper's scream tore through the silence that had locked up Olivia's mind. Her coworker had seen what was inside the box and reacted on instinct, a sharp, horrified sound that echoed through the diner. After that, everything happened as if in a blurred dream. Customers jumped up in panic. Eddie rushed out from the kitchen. "Someone called the police," Harper sobbed. And Olivia stood there in the middle of it all, still holding the note with the 2 words that burned into her vision. "She's next." She was going to be next. Somehow, she found her phone in her pocket and dialed Vincent's number. Her voice shook when she spoke, but she got the words out. She told him about the package, about the doll, about the note. On the other end of the line, silence held for a breathless moment. Then Vincent spoke, his voice ice cold. "Do not go anywhere. I am coming now." And the call ended. At the Romano estate, Marco Santini stood outside Vincent's office door and heard destruction from within. Glass shattering, wood breaking, the roar of a man who had lost control completely. In more than 10 years of serving Vincent Romano, Marco had never seen his boss like this. Vincent was cold, calculating, always perfectly in command of his emotions. But now he was tearing the room apart like a cornered animal. When Vincent finally stepped out, his face looked carved from stone, but his gray eyes burned with a fire Marco recognized as the promise of death to anyone who dared stand in the way. "Get the car ready," Vincent said, his voice so even it was frightening. "And call Richard. I want everything on Volkov. Everything." 20 minutes later, Vincent was at Eddie's diner. The police had already come and gone, taking the box as evidence, clearly not understanding its true weight. Vincent did not care about the police. He cared only about Olivia. She was sitting in the corner, her face pale, but her eyes still steady. When she saw Vincent, she stood and walked toward him. They did not speak at first. Vincent only looked her over, head to toe, as if checking that she was still whole. Then he spoke. "You are coming to stay at the estate, right now?" Olivia shook her head. "No." Vincent's brow tightened, clearly unused to being refused, especially in a moment like this. "Do you not understand?" he demanded, tension cutting his words. "Volkov is threatening to kill you. This is not a game." "I understand," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I cannot live in your mansion like a bird in a cage. I need my own space." They stared at each other, two wills colliding. And in the end, they reached a compromise. Olivia agreed to leave her apartment and move into one of Vincent's safe houses, a secure penthouse in Manhattan, with the most advanced security system money could buy. But she refused, absolutely, to quit her job. "That job is all I have left of my dignity," she said, her tone unshakable. "I lost my parents. I lost my sister. I lost my home. I will not lose one more thing because of fear." Vincent looked at her with an expression she could not read. Then he nodded, accepting her terms. "But you will have protection around the clock," he said, leaving no room for argument. "And you will not walk home alone again. Not ever." Olivia agreed. That night, in the unfamiliar penthouse with its white walls and minimalist furniture, Olivia stood at the window and stared out at the Manhattan skyline. City lights blinked below like an ocean of stars, beautiful and calm, the exact opposite of the storm churning inside her. She thought of the doll with its throat cut, of the note with its 2 blood-red words, of Nikolai Volkov, the enemy she had never met, who wanted her dead, and of Vincent, the man who had somehow become the center of her life in only a few short weeks. She knew the storm was coming. She just did not know if she was strong enough to survive it. The days that followed moved in a strange rhythm Olivia never expected. She thought she would feel suffocated living in an unfamiliar penthouse with guards posted outside the door at all hours. She thought she would go out of her mind with worry and fear. But the reality was nothing like that. Because Vincent came to see her every night. He showed up after her shift, usually around 8 or 9 in the evening, carrying bags of takeout from different restaurants across the city. "Tonight is Italian," he said on the first night, setting the containers on the table. "Tomorrow I will bring Thai. Do you like Thai food?" Olivia looked at him, surprised by a thoughtfulness she would never have expected from a Mafia boss. "I like any food I do not have to cook," she replied, and Vincent laughed. A real laugh she had never heard from him before. They ate dinner together on the sofa in front of the television, like 2 ordinary friends instead of a broke waitress and the most powerful man in New York. Olivia discovered Vincent had a secret love for nature documentaries. He could sit for hours watching lions hunt on the African plains or whales migrate across the ocean, and she saw the constant tension in his face ease in those moments. Another night, Olivia insisted on cooking instead of eating restaurant food. She found ingredients in the refrigerator, stocked by Vincent's staff, and made a simple pasta dish her mother had taught her. Vincent stood beside her in the small kitchen, awkward as a fish on dry land when she told him to chop an onion. "I have never cooked," he admitted, staring at the onion like it might be a timed explosive. "The Mafia boss is afraid of onions?" Olivia teased, and Vincent shot her a look of mock annoyance. "I am not afraid," I am just not used to it." She laughed and showed him how to hold the knife properly, her fingers brushing his by accident, and they both pretended they did not notice the way that moment lingered longer than it needed to. On nights like those, Olivia saw a different Vincent, a Vincent who smiled more, who spoke about the childhood dreams he had once had. When he wanted to be an architect, he talked about the buildings he used to sketch, about wanting to create something beautiful instead of destroying. He talked about his mother, about how she had held the family together through storms Olivia could barely imagine. And one night, with the city lights blinking beyond the windows and the two of them sitting close on the sofa after dinner, Vincent spoke about Luca. He did not want anything to do with the family business. He wanted to be a doctor. Olivia did not speak. She only placed her hand over his, a small gesture that carried more meaning than words. "I was not there to protect him," Vincent went on, his voice catching. "I was in a meeting. A damn meeting about money and territory. I will not make that mistake again." Olivia squeezed his hand, feeling the grief gnawing at him from the inside. "You cannot control everything," she said softly. "You can only do your best." Vincent shook his head, gray eyes dark. My best was not enough for him. They sat in silence. And then Olivia did something she had not planned. She leaned in and rested her head on his shoulder. A quiet intimacy she did not know she had the courage for until it was already happening. Vincent went still for a beat, then relaxed, one arm settling lightly against her back. They stayed that way for a long time. And when Olivia lifted her head, Vincent's face was only inches from hers. His gray eyes looked down at her, no longer cold, but filled with something she did not dare name. She felt his warm breath against her cheek, saw his gaze drift to her mouth, and then return to her eyes. Her heart raced. He leaned toward her, and she closed her eyes. Then Vincent's phone vibrated, shattering the moment like a bucket of cold water. He pulled back, drew out his phone, and looked at the screen. Instantly, the softness in his face vanished, replaced by the familiar, hard calm. "What?" Olivia asked, her heart still pounding from the moment that had been stolen. "Volkov," Vincent said, standing up fast. "He just hit one of my businesses. I have to go." He moved quickly toward the door, but stopped before opening it. He turned back to her, his gray eyes full of worry. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except Marco. Do you understand?" Olivia nodded, her throat suddenly dry. Then he left, the door closing behind him, leaving her alone in the quiet penthouse. Olivia stood there, staring at the shut door, and a bad feeling slid down her spine. She did not know why, but she had the sense that something terrible was about to happen. The next morning, when the first sunlight slid through the penthouse windows, Olivia woke with a decision already formed in the night. She needed to go back to her old apartment, not for clothes or personal items, things that could be replaced, but for the only family photograph she still had, the one taken of all four of them in the last summer before the accident, and Lily's silver bracelet, the final birthday gift Olivia had given her sister before the illness turned truly cruel. Those could not be replaced. They were everything she had left of her family. Vincent had been gone since the night before and still had not returned. Buried in the attack Volkov had launched against one of his businesses. Olivia called Marco, who was waiting downstairs in the lobby, and told him what she needed. Marco hesitated. "I should check with the boss first," he said over the phone. Olivia understood his caution, but she also knew Vincent had bigger problems right now. "Just 15 minutes, she insisted. "In, grab it, out. You will be with me the whole time." A silence stretched, then Marco exhaled. "All right, but we do it fast." They reached Olivia's building within 20 minutes. The familiar alley, the old stairs, the damp, sour smell that always lived in the place. Everything looked normal, too normal. Marco went first, one hand resting near the gun hidden under his jacket, his eyes sweeping the hallway like a hawk. He unlocked the apartment, stepped inside to check, then motioned for Olivia to follow. She crossed the threshold, her gaze searching for the shelf where she kept the family photo. And that was when everything happened. A dark shape lunged out of the bedroom, then another from the bathroom. Marco reacted with the speed of a man trained for violence, drawing his gun and firing 2 shots in quick succession. The attackers fell, but not fast enough. One of them managed to fire back, the bullet punching through Marco's shoulder and making him stagger. Olivia screamed, instinct telling her to run, but her feet felt glued to the floor. She saw Marco trying to force himself upright, blood blooming through his shirt, his eyes still searching for her, still trying to protect her. But he did not see the third man, the one coming up behind Olivia. She only felt a cold breath at the back of her neck before a brutal blow crashed down on her head. The world spun, then slid into darkness. When Olivia came to, the first thing she felt was pain. Pain in her head where she had been struck. Pain in her wrists where rough rope bit into her skin. Pain in her mouth where she could taste blood. She blinked, trying to focus through the dizziness. This was not her apartment. This was an abandoned warehouse, with gray concrete walls, weak light from a few bare bulbs hanging loose from the ceiling, and the stale smell of damp mixed with machine oil. She was sitting on a wooden chair, hands tied behind her back, ankles bound to the chair legs. No movement, no escape. Then she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the darkness in front of her. A man stepped into the light, and Olivia knew who he was, even though she had never met him. Nikolai Volkov, about 45, blonde hair gone silver at the edges, a hard-angled face marked by a long scar running from his temple down his cheek. He wore an expensive gray suit, as if he were headed to a business meeting, instead of standing over a kidnapped woman. And he smiled, a polite smile so smooth it was terrifying. "Miss Bennett," he said, his voice thick with a Russian accent, but his English flawless. "I have heard so much about you." Olivia said nothing. She only looked straight into his eyes with every scrap of courage she could gather. He was in no hurry. He pulled another chair close, placed it in front of her only a few feet away, and sat down as comfortably as if he were in his own living room. "Do you know why you are here?" he asked, tilting his head as if studying something interesting. Olivia swallowed, her throat dry. "Because you want revenge on Vincent." Volkov laughed, a real laugh, as if she had said something genuinely funny. "Smart. I like smart women." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, those cold eyes locking onto hers. "But this is not only revenge, Miss Bennett. This is justice. Vincent Romano took everything from me. Now I will take what matters most to him." He paused, the smile widening. "And that, it seems, is you." Olivia felt ice slide down her spine, but she did not let fear show on her face. She had faced death before. She had watched it steal her parents and her sister. She would not bow to it now. Volkov watched her for a long moment, as if weighing her reaction. Then he nodded, satisfied. "Brave. Good. That will make this game more interesting." He leaned back, crossed one leg over the other, relaxed as if settling in for a long conversation. "Now," he said gently, like he was inviting her to tea, "tell me about Vincent Romano." Volkov sat across from Olivia with the patience of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. He studied her the way someone studies a work of art, head tilted slightly to one side, that smile never leaving his mouth. "So," he began, his tone gentle, like he was catching up with an old friend. "How did you and Vincent meet? I heard you saved his mother. How romantic. A poor waitress and a powerful mafia boss, like a fairy tale." Olivia did not answer. She stared straight at him, lips pressed into a hard, rigid line. She would not give him what he wanted. She would not say a single word about Vincent. Volkov did not seem irritated by her silence. If anything, he looked amused. "Silence, huh?" he murmured, nodding as if impressed. "Loyal, I respect that. But let me ask you something else. Did he tell you what he has done?" Olivia still said nothing, but she felt her heart kick faster by a beat. Volkov caught that small shift, and his smile widened. "Did he tell you he killed my brother?" The question dropped like a stone thrown into still water. Olivia tried to keep her face blank, but she knew she had failed when she saw the victorious glint in Volkov's eyes. "Alexei," Volkov continued, his voice lowering, carrying a kind of pain Olivia could not tell was real or staged. "My brother, 23 years old. He had nothing to do with my work. He was an innocent kid, and Vincent Romano had him shot dead right in front of me." Silence stretched. Olivia watched Volkov, trying to read him, trying to separate truth from lie. Then she spoke for the first time. "And you killed his brother." Volkov blinked, and real surprise flickered across his face for a heartbeat. Then he laughed, a rough sound that echoed through the empty warehouse. "So he did tell you. Interesting. He trusts you that much?" Volkov leaned forward, his expression turning more serious. "But did he tell you the full version? Or only the version he wanted you to hear?" Olivia did not answer, but she felt a seed of doubt begin to sprout inside her, and she hated herself for it. "Let me tell you the truth," Volkov said, his voice like a sad story spoken softly. "Vincent's father and I were partners. We built this empire together. But the Romano family is greedy. They wanted everything. When I refused to give in, they killed Alexei to warn me. I retaliated by killing Luca. An eye for an eye. That is the law of our world. But Vincent would not accept it. He destroyed everything I built and drove me out of the city like a dog. He thinks he is justice itself, but he is only a killer, just like me. Olivia listened, her pulse racing. She knew Volkov was trying to manipulate her. She knew he was mixing truth and lies, but she could not deny that parts of his story sounded plausible, and that terrified her more than any threat. Volkov watched her, reading the conflict on her face. "You are doubting him, aren't you?" he asked, his voice gentle, almost comforting. "That is a normal reaction. Vincent Romano is very good at wearing masks. He makes you think he is a good man, but he is not. He is a monster. Like me." He stood, moved closer, and bent down until they were eye to eye. "I have an offer for you, Miss Bennett. Help me destroy him, and I will let you live. Not only that," he smiled, his gaze cold as a snake, "I will pay off your sister's hospital debt. I know you are still carrying it. How much is it? $100,000? 200,000? To me, that is pocket change." Olivia felt as if she had been slapped. He knew about Lily. He knew about the debt. He had studied her down to the smallest detail. "Think about it," Volkov murmured, his voice sweet poison. "You could be free of debt. You could start over. All you have to do is give me information about him, his weak spots, his plans, his schedule, small things, and you will be free." Olivia looked at him, and for a moment, she truly considered it. Not for the money, not even for her life, but because his words about Vincent had planted a doubt she could not completely deny. She thought about what she knew of Vincent, his coldness, the violent world he lived in, the secrets he had never fully told her. Volkov saw the hesitation in her eyes, and his smile widened. He thought he had won. Then Olivia thought about the rainy night Vincent brought her home. She thought about the way he touched her cheek with a gentleness she never expected a man like him could carry. She thought about his eyes when he spoke of Luca, full of pain and regret. She thought about the way he said, "I will not let anything happen to you," and she made her decision. She lifted her head, looked Volkov straight in the eyes, and spat directly in his face. "Go to hell." Volkov froze, saliva sliding down his cheek. A deadly silence followed. Then, very slowly, he raised a hand and wiped his face, the motion controlled in a way that was frightening, and he smiled, a small smile, laced with a strange kind of admiration. "I admire your loyalty," he said, his voice still mild, as if nothing had happened. "It will make breaking you so much more satisfying." He turned and walked toward the darkness where Dmitri waited. "Make her scream," he ordered, his voice cold as ice. "But keep her alive. We need her for the call." Vincent was in the middle of an emergency meeting with his inner circle when his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and saw the hospital number. A chill slid down his spine before he even answered. "This is Mount Sinai Hospital," a professional female voice said. "We have a patient named Marco Santini, brought into the emergency department with a gunshot wound. He asked us to contact this number." Vincent shot to his feet, the chair scraping back and hitting the wall with a sharp thud. Everyone in the room went silent, watching him with unease. "Where is the girl who was with him?" Vincent demanded, his voice tight as if someone had a hand around his throat. A pause on the other end. "We have no information about anyone else. Mr. Santini was found alone in an apartment in Brooklyn." Vincent ended the call and turned to his men. "To the hospital. Now." They reached Mount Sinai in 15 minutes, a new record for crossing Manhattan during rush hour. Vincent stormed into the emergency area, his eyes scanning bed after bed until he found Marco. Marco lay there with white bandages wrapped around his shoulder, already soaked with blood, his face pale but still conscious. When he saw Vincent, Marco's eyes filled with grief and guilt. "Boss," he whispered. "I am sorry. I am sorry." "Where is she?" Vincent asked, even though he already knew. Marco closed his eyes. A single tear slid down his cheek. "They took her. I tried. I dropped 2 of them, but there was a third. I did not see him." "Boss, she is gone." Vincent stood there in silence, as if time had stopped. The world around him blurred. The noise of the hospital faded into distance, and all he could hear was his own heart hammering inside his chest. Then he turned and walked out. The guards followed, but no one dared speak. They recognized that expression. They had seen it once before, on the day Luca died. Back at the estate, Vincent went straight into his office and slammed the door. 1 second of silence, then glass shattered, wood cracked, books hit the floor. The roar of a man coming apart from the inside. Vincent destroyed everything within reach. The desk lamp, the picture frame, the liquor cabinet, the computer monitor. He did not feel the pain when glass cut into his hands. He did not feel anything except the rage and terror swallowing him whole. Olivia. She was gone. She was in Volkov's hands, and it was his fault. He had promised to protect her. He had sworn nothing would happen to her, and he had failed. Again, just like he had failed Luka. He was shouting Volkov's name when the phone rang again. A video call from an unknown number. Vincent stopped, breathing hard, his hand shaking as he hit accept, and his heart broke when the image appeared on the screen. Olivia, tied to a chair, her face bruised, her lips split and bleeding, one eye swollen shut, but her head was still lifted, her gaze fixed on the camera with a look that refused to bend. Even like this, she would not bow. Volkov's voice came from off-screen. Vincent Romano, long time no see. She is pretty. I see why you like her. If you dare. Dare what? Volkov cut in, his tone dripping with mockery. Kill me? You had that chance 5 years ago, and you did not take it. Now I have what you want, and you will do what I say. Volkov stepped into frame, standing beside Olivia, one hand settling on her shoulder like he owned her. Here is my demand. You will leave New York. Forever. You will hand over all your territory to me, and you will kneel and apologize to me in person, in front of everyone. You have 24 hours. Vincent ground his teeth, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. And if I refuse? Volkov smiled, a smile cold as winter. Then I will send her back to you, piece by piece. On the screen, Olivia moved. She shook her head, a small motion but unmistakable. She was telling him, do not agree. Do not sacrifice everything for me. And Vincent looked into her eyes, saw the courage and the selflessness in that bruised, swollen gaze, and he knew what he would do. I will do what you ask, he said, his voice flat. But if a single hair on her head, the call cut out, the screen went black. Vincent stood in silence, the phone still locked in his fist, staring into nothing. And that was when Catherine walked in. She had heard and came immediately. She took in the ruined room, saw her son standing in the wreckage with blood on his hands and emptiness on his face. She crossed to him and wrapped him in her arms the way she had when he was a frightened boy. What will you do? She asked softly. In his mother's embrace, for the first time in many years, Vincent felt like he could fall apart. But he did not have the right to fall apart. Not now. Not when Olivia needed him. Anything, he whispered, barely audible. I will do anything to bring her home. Vincent had no intention of surrendering. Not truly. The moment the call with Volkov ended, he began to plan, a plan only 3 people knew, and each of them was willing to trade their life to carry it out. First, he called Richard Callahan, the Romano family attorney, the man who had handled every legal problem for them for 20 years. Richard had connections even Vincent did not fully understand, and one of those connections reached into the FBI. Volkov was not only Vincent's enemy. He was also on a federal wanted list for weapons trafficking and money laundering. The FBI had tracked him for years but never had enough evidence, or the right opening, to move. Now Vincent would give them both. At the same time, he ordered his people to locate Olivia. Volkov was careful, but no one could be completely invisible in the age of technology. Every call left a trace, every vehicle could be tracked, and Vincent had resources Volkov could not imagine. Within 12 hours, they had identified the warehouse where Olivia was being held, an abandoned industrial zone on the outskirts of New Jersey, about 45 minutes from Manhattan by car. In that warehouse, Olivia was living through the darkest hours of her life. Dmitri did as Volkov ordered, torturing her to make her scream, so Vincent could hear it through the phone if Volkov decided to call again. But Olivia did not scream. She bit down until her mouth bled, tears sliding down her cheeks, but she did not give them the sound of her pain. Dmitri stood in front of her, breathing hard with anger and exhaustion. He had hit her, slapped her, done everything Volkov allowed without killing her. Still, she would not break. "Why will you not go down?" he snarled, grabbing her hair and yanking her head back. "You are just a nameless waitress. Why are you so loyal to him?" Olivia looked at him, her eyes swollen but still burning with a fire that would not die. Her torn mouth moved as she answered, her voice rough but steady. Because I have something worth fighting for." Dmitri was about to strike her again when a sound came from outside the warehouse. Then another, and another. Gunfire. He snapped his head toward the door, eyes wide with alarm. What? The warehouse door was kicked open. Men in black suits poured in like a flood, weapons raised, moving with the precision of trained fighters. Behind them, Olivia could see the flashing blue and red lights of FBI vehicles. Dmitri tried to pull his gun, but he was not fast enough. A bullet tore through his hand, sending the weapon clattering to the floor. He howled and dropped, and then it was over, as quickly as it began. Volkov's men at the warehouse were either shot down or snapped into handcuffs. Dmitri lay on the concrete, groaning, blood spilling from his wounded hand, and Olivia was untied by a man she recognized as one of Vincent's guards. "You are safe now," he told her, gentle but professional. "The boss is on his way." At the same time, at an abandoned pier in Brooklyn, Vincent was carrying out the rest of the plan. He came to the meeting point alone, exactly as Volkov demanded. No weapon, no entourage, only him in the dark. Volkov was waiting, surrounded by 6 gunmen, victory on his lips. He watched Vincent step out of the shadows and come closer, each footfall echoing on the concrete. "Vincent Romano," Volkov said, savoring every word. "Finally you have learned how to bow." Vincent said nothing. He only stood there, gray eyes locked on Volkov. "Kneel," Volkov ordered, his smile widening. "Kneel and apologize. In front of everyone here." A beat of silence stretched. Volkov's gunmen tightened their grips, ready to fire if Vincent made a single wrong move. Then Vincent Romano, the most powerful Mafia boss in New York, slowly knelt. His knee touched the cold concrete with a dry, hollow sound. Volkov laughed, a sound thick with pleasure and cruelty. The great Vincent Romano on his knees because of a waitress. What a beautiful sight. If only your brother could see you now. He was saying something else when the phone in his pocket vibrated. He frowned, pulled it out, and looked at the screen. The smile on his face froze. "What?" he barked into the phone. "All of them. How can that be?" He lifted his head and stared at Vincent in horror. "You." Vincent rose, slow and measured. His gray eyes were no longer empty. They burned with a cold, merciless fire. "I knelt because she is worth more than my pride," he said, his voice like ice. "And you are nothing." Volkov tried to shout orders to his gunmen, but it was too late. From every direction, blinding headlights flooded the pier. A helicopter roared overhead. A loudspeaker cracked through the night. "FBI, drop your weapons. You are surrounded." Volkov's gunmen glanced at one another in confusion, then one by one let their weapons fall and surrendered. Only Volkov remained standing, his face drained, staring at Vincent with pure hatred. "You will pay for this," he roared as FBI agents moved in and cuffed him. Vincent stepped close enough that only Volkov could hear. "Prison will be worse than death for a man like you," Vincent said, barely above a breath. "You will have plenty of time to think about everything you lost." He watched Volkov being led away, then turned and moved quickly toward the waiting car. He had only one thought in his mind: Olivia. He needed to see her, needed to know she was safe, needed to hold her, and never let go. The hospital room was filled with the soft, late-afternoon light when Olivia slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she felt was the dull ache that lived throughout her body, as if every muscle and every joint were protesting the fact that she was still alive. The second thing she felt was warmth wrapped around her right hand. She turned her head, her neck flaring with pain, and saw him. Vincent sat in the chair beside her bed, leaning forward slightly, both hands clasped around hers, as if he was afraid that if he let go, she would disappear. He was still wearing the suit from the night before, now wrinkled and smeared with dirt. The black hair he usually kept neatly combed was mussed, and his gray eyes, when they met hers, were bloodshot from lack of sleep, and carried something that looked like the trace of dried tears. How long has he been here? She wondered. Since the moment she arrived. All through the night, all through today. Looking at the exhaustion on his face, she guessed it was all of it. "Olivia," Vincent said, his voice rough, as if he had not spoken in hours. "You are awake," she tried to smile, even though the cracked skin of her lips made the movement hurt. "I am alive," she whispered. "You cannot get rid of me that easily." Vincent did not smile. He only looked at her, his gray eyes full of something she had never seen there before. Not the familiar coldness, not the perfect control, but hurt, fear, and a love so deep it stole her breath. "I thought I was going to lose you," he said, barely audible. "When I saw you on that screen, tied up, beaten, He stopped, jaw tightening as if he was forcing the emotion back down. Olivia watched him, and a shard of memory from that video call flashed in her mind. She remembered Volkov giving orders. She remembered Vincent on the screen, his face gone pale. She remembered shaking her head, trying to tell him not to agree. And she remembered what he had done. "You knelt," she said. Not a question, but an acknowledgement. "For me." Vincent nodded without hesitation. "I would do it again, 1,000 times if I had to." Tears rose at the corners of Olivia's eyes, slid down her cheeks, and soaked into the pillow. She shook her head, her throat tightening. "I do not deserve." "What are you saying?" Vincent cut in, his voice suddenly strong. "You do not deserve it. Olivia, you are the most deserving person I have ever met. You saved my mother without asking for a cent. You refused my money. You looked Volkov in the eye and spat in his face when he made his offer. You did not break when they hurt you. You are the strongest, bravest, best person I have ever known. And you are telling me you do not deserve." He lifted a hand and gently wiped the tears from her cheek, careful around the bruises. "You deserve everything," he said, his voice softening, "and I will spend the rest of my life proving that, if you will let me." Olivia looked into his eyes, saw the honesty there, unmistakable, in eyes that had once been cold as steel but were warm as fire now, and she knew that whatever came next, she wanted to face it with him. "I want to leave it all," Vincent said, as if he had read her thoughts. "The empire, the blood, the guilt, all of it. I almost lost you, and in that moment I realized nothing is worth that. No territory, no power, nothing." Olivia stared at him, shocked. "Are you sure? That is your whole life?" "No." Vincent shook his head, tightening his grip on her hand. "It is a life I was forced to live. You are my life now." He told her about his plan, handing control to the men he trusted, the ones who could run everything without violence, focusing on the legitimate businesses the Romano family had built over the years, stepping out of the darkness and into the light. "And one more thing," he added, his voice gentler. "I want to start a charitable foundation, to fund research and support for blood cancer patients, in Lily's name, and Luca's." Olivia could not stop the sob that rose in her chest. She looked at him through tears, unable to believe what she was hearing. This man, the powerful and feared Mafia boss, was talking about giving it all up for her, talking about honoring her sister, a girl he had never even met. "Vincent," she whispered, not knowing what else to say. "We can leave New York," he went on, a flicker of hope lighting his gray eyes. "Start over somewhere new. Italy, maybe. My mother always talks about going back. Or anywhere you want, just as long as you are with me." Olivia looked at him, the man who had knelt for her, the man who was willing to abandon an empire for her, the man looking at her with love and hope, and she smiled, a real smile, even with tears still falling. "Where would we go?" she asked, her voice trembling with happiness. Vincent squeezed her hand, and a rare smile opened on his mouth. "Anywhere, as long as we are together." 5 days later, when the bruises on her face had begun to fade and her body no longer ached the way it had, Olivia returned to her small apartment in Brooklyn. She stood in the familiar room and looked around at the simple things she had gathered over the years of wrestling with life. Biscuit ran to her and rubbed against her legs, and she scooped the calico cat into her arms, feeling the warm purr vibrating in that small chest. She had asked Harper to care for Biscuit during the days she was in the hospital, and the cat seemed to understand something had happened, because he would not leave her side. Sunset light streamed through the window when a knock came at the door. Olivia opened it and found Vincent standing there, but this was a different Vincent from the man she had first met in the dark not so long ago. He was not wearing an expensive 3-piece suit. There was no crew of men in black suits behind him, only a simple brown leather jacket, jeans, and gray eyes looking at her with a tenderness he usually kept hidden. He looked ordinary, almost like a normal man, and somehow, that made him more handsome than ever in her eyes. For the first moment they did not speak. They only stood there, looking at each other, as if trying to memorize every line of the other's face. Then Vincent stepped forward, and Olivia stepped into his arms like that was where she had always belonged. They held each other for a long time, right there in front of the small apartment, not caring who might see. Olivia felt the steady beat of Vincent's heart under the jacket, felt his warm breath in her hair, and she knew this was where she wanted to stay forever. They sat down on the small sofa in the living room, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. Biscuit hopped into Olivia's lap and curled up to sleep, as if accepting Vincent's presence. Vincent told her about his plan. Everything had been arranged. Power had been transferred. The legitimate businesses had been separated from the darker operations. The charitable foundation in Lily's and Luca's names had been established, and he had bought a small villa in Tuscany, where his mother would live once everything in New York was finished. "I want you to come with me," Vincent said, his voice gentle, but full of hope. "But I will not force you. If you want to stay here, I will understand. I will wait, no matter how long it takes." Olivia looked around her apartment, the place she had lived for 3 years, where she had cried alone on nights when she missed Lily, where she had worked herself to exhaustion just to keep paying down debt. Then she looked back at Vincent, at those gray eyes waiting for her answer. "My life is here," she began slowly, "and there is nothing left. My family is gone. All I have is a job and an apartment I have never truly called home." She paused and lifted a hand to Vincent's cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her palm. "But with you," she continued, her voice trembling, "I can have a future. For the first time in so many years, I can have a future." Vincent looked at her, and his gray eyes lit with a happiness he once believed he would never be allowed to feel again. Then he leaned down, and their lips met for the first time. The kiss was gentle, tender, full of promises that did not need words. There was no hurry, no demand, only two souls who had found each other in the dark, finally seeing the light. A week later, before leaving for Tuscany, Olivia went to the cemetery. She brought 3 bouquets of white roses, the flower her mother had loved most. She placed 1 bouquet on her father's grave, 1 on her mother's, and 1 on Lily's, where the inscription she had chosen was carved, "Lily Bennett, light in the darkness, forever loved." Olivia knelt, her hand resting softly against her sister's headstone. "I am sorry I have not come as often," she whispered, "but I know you are all always with me. I found a good man. He is not perfect, but who is? He loves me, and I love him. I will be all right." She lifted her face, tears spilling down her cheeks. "And I will never forget Mom and Dad, never forget Lily. You will always be in my heart, wherever I go." A little distance away, Vincent stood by the car, waiting. He did not come closer. He gave her the privacy she needed to say goodbye. But he was there, a quiet reminder that she did not have to carry her grief alone anymore. Olivia rose, wiped her tears, and walked toward him. Toward the future. The private airfield was quiet when the small plane lifted off that afternoon. Olivia sat by the window, watching New York shrink beneath them. The skyscrapers became tiny blocks. The Hudson became a ribbon of silver winding through the land. Then everything vanished behind a layer of white cloud. Vincent took her hand, their fingers weaving together as if they had been made for this. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Olivia turned and looked at him, into gray eyes now filled with love and hope. "Not a single one," she answered, smiling, and she meant it. Some people say kindness is weakness, that in a harsh world, the gentle will be crushed and forgotten. But for Olivia Bennett, kindness led her to the place she truly belonged, beside the man she loved, moving toward a future she had never dared to dream. Sometimes the most unexpected roads bring us exactly where we need to be, and sometimes one small act of kindness, like stopping to help a stranger in the dark, can change an entire life. The lesson this story wants to leave behind is to hold on to your kind heart, no matter how hard life becomes. Kindness is not weakness, it is the greatest strength a person can have. And true love can come from the places we least expect, as long as we dare to open our hearts and believe. And that is where Olivia's and Vincent's story ends. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the final moments. If you enjoyed this story, please press like and share this video with the people you love, the ones who may need a beautiful love story to believe in life again. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss new videos every day. I would truly love to know how you felt about this story. Have you ever met someone who completely changed your life? Do you believe in the power of kindness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I am always hoping to hear what is deepest in your heart. I wish everyone watching this video good health, a peaceful life, and a little more joy each day. Thank you again, goodbye, and I will see you in the next video.